Is the Queen Mary 2 bigger or more luxurious than the Titanic? These are questions I hear very often. Because of the hype surrounding the Titanic, including blockbuster movies and countless books, articles, and websites, the ship's size and luxury is still revered to this day. But Queen Mary 2 is bigger than Titanic, much bigger. In fact, if she was in service today, Titanic would be classed as a small to mid-sized ship, clocking in at a mere 46,329 gross registered tons. Compare this to the 149,215 gross tons of QM2, and you get a good idea as to how much bigger QM2 really is compared with Titanic, at least in terms of internal volume. I'm maritime history author and lecturer Chris Frame, and thanks for joining me. Titanic was built for the White Star Line, and in 1912 she was the largest liner in the world. The ship was the second in the Olympic class of liners, and took the title of the world's biggest ocean liner from her sister ship, the Olympic. Dimensionally, Titanic and Olympic were identical, 882 feet long and 92 feet wide. While the two ships were almost twins, Titanic was modified slightly to give the ship a larger internal volume, thanks in part to screens added to enclose the first-class promenade. This is actually a really handy way to differentiate the two ships. Queen Mary 2, on the other hand, eclipses Titanic in every measurement. She's 256 feet longer than Titanic, 55 feet wider at her widest point, and reaches 13 decks above the waterline, making her top passenger areas far taller than Titanic's. QM2's decks are also taller than Titanic, especially the double height decks on Deck 2 and Deck 3, and the QM2 spans 237 feet high from the keel to the funnel. So what about luxury? Titanic is remembered as the world's most luxurious ship, so surely her first-class passengers enjoyed more luxurious surroundings than those found on board QM2. First class on Titanic and Olympic was of a high standard, and we've all seen the photos of first-class grand staircase, wide open decks, and innovative Turkish baths, as well as a swimming pool. Second class was of a high standard, and third class was considered of comparable style to the second class of lesser liners at the time. But it might surprise you that the luxury of Titanic was challenged the same year that the ship entered service. In fact, liners such as SS France of 1912, Germany's Imperator of 1913, and Cunard's Aquitania of 1914 all challenged the Olympic-class liners in terms of luxury. Fast forward to the 21st century, and nearly every aspect of a QM2 voyage is more luxurious and comfortable than what you would have experienced on board Titanic. Take bathrooms, for example. Every one of QM2's cabins have an ensuite, from the smallest inside room to the biggest suite. While aboard Titanic, only a handful of select first-class cabins had private facilities. Everyone else had to share. QM2 is fully air-conditioned, whilst Titanic was not. She offers more bars, lounges, and restaurants than Titanic did. The ship has an onboard entertainment staff to keep passengers occupied, and a theatre, a ballroom, and a seagoing planetarium, all absent from Titanic's deck plans. Not to mention QM2's spa, which was designed by Canyon Ranch. This video is brought to you by me and my new book, The Evolution of the Passenger Ship. In The Evolution of the Passenger Ship, we've brought years of research together to create a book that takes you on a journey from the earliest sailing ships right the way through to the modern behemoths that we see today. The Evolution of the Passenger Ship is available at all good bookshops, and if you buy a copy, you help us by supporting the channel. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. QM2 also offers a high percentage of balcony accommodation, while only a few select first-class cabins had their own veranda on board Titanic. QM2 also has no second or third class. All passengers are welcome to enjoy all of the ship's amenities, with the exception of a few small select areas reserved for the guests in the top suites. QM2 offers a greater space per passenger ratio as well. Her 2,695 passengers enjoy a ship of 149,215 gross tons, offering a metric space ratio of around 1:55. On the other hand, Titanic carried 2,435 passengers, and as the ship was just over 46,000 gross registered tons, that offers an imperial space ratio of 1:18.8, considerably less than Queen Mary 2. QM2 is also faster than the Titanic. The older ship utilized a combination of steam-powered reciprocating engines and a single turbine to run 3 propellers, achieving a top speed of 23 knots. QM2 obviously has a more modern power plant, using a combination of diesel-electric engines and gas turbines to drive 4 Rolls-Royce pods, giving her a top speed of around 30 knots, though her cruising speed of 26 knots is still faster than Titanic's maximum. So the last point that I often hear is fame. Which ship is the most famous? Well, QM2 is considered one of the most famous ships in the world, given to her status as the only active transatlantic liner in the world. But many people point out that Titanic is far more famous and better known, and this is probably true. There are so many books, articles, videos, websites, and other documents written about the Titanic, it would be impossible to count them all. But how many of you have heard of the Imperator or the Oceanic or the Sirius, or even the Olympic or the Britannic? Perhaps some of you, but I'd say the majority of people out there wouldn't recognize those names. Yet they were some of the most famous ocean liners of their day, and in fact, before Titanic sank, Olympic was far more famous than Titanic was. So what is my point? It is that while Titanic is the most famous ship in the world, she is famous because she sank. It is a tragedy of the Titanic disaster that gave her a special place in the history books. QM2, on the other hand, is famous because she is unique, a one-off liner designed in the 21st century. Nothing quite like QM2 has been attempted before or since, and despite her being eclipsed in size and scale by numerous cruise ships, the largest of which these days is 250,000 gross tons, QM2's position as the last of the great transatlantic liners allows her to attract more attention than all of the cruise ships combined. Do you agree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks so much for watching. If you want to learn more about ocean liners, check out my ocean liner playlist. And until next time, I hope to see you on board.